at the NABJ conference. Stuart Stevens wrote a tweet saying for the Trump campaign, watching his remarks had to have been like watching a baby crawl across the interstate. What do you think about his comments?
Yeah. I don't think the baby made it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I don't think the baby made it. No, I appreciated Stuart's tweet. Look, there are a couple of things that were going on with this that I thought were very interesting and important to note. One, probably primarily was Trump wanted the platform, wanted to take advantage of the platform. A lot of people saying, you know, the person who put him on, you know, put him up to this or agreed to do this should have been fired. No, not after thanking them first. And the reason for that is the second piece of this, we got to see Trump. We got to hear him engage with African-American journalists, African-American women in particular. And we got to see and hear that ourselves. And the more that interview went on, the more you began to realize how weird, unhinged, combative, and childlike in his behavior at times he is. But the other side, and probably the most important piece, was to get in front of that platform. And I hope people appreciate something very important. He wasn't talking to that audience. He was not talking to trying to galvanize black voters per se. That a lot of that meat, particularly the more combative portions of it, because you don't go into someone's house and start breaking their furniture and expect them to like you and start criticizing how their mama prepared the meal and expecting them to walk away going, hey, we want you back. That conversation was largely for his base and largely for white male grievance holders out there who have, if you've not noticed, for a week or so more now, been pushing out this conversation around, well, is she really black? You know, is she really black? What is she? You know, mispronouncing her name, the vice president's name. So that was a wink and a nod of, yeah, I get it. I'm with you. I hear you. And it was less for the folks in that audience than anything else. And I hope people don't get that twisted, because that was not how you go and have a conversation with black folk. Let me just tell you straight up. I don't care if you are Donald Trump or not if you want that vote.
Then, Michael, do you think the NABJ got used tonight? Do they regret having him there? Because if they didn't, think about that headline, unwilling to sit down with the Republican nominee.
No, and that's exactly why it caused such consternation that led to one of the members of the leadership to resign, because it did cause the kind of rife within the body itself. There were a lot of folks there who did not want him there. Notice what happened when he was introduced. No applause, no one standing. He walks out on the stage. You could tell he was waiting for it, but it wasn't coming. And so there was that tension for having him there. But as much tension as it was, I think it was very important that he be there and that he be exposed that way. Look, we have had Donald Trump largely off the radar screen, and people have forgotten what he sounds like and how he engages with people he doesn't like, or he, more importantly, does not respect. And you got a full-throated taste of that. So much so, remember, that was supposed to have been an hour interview. His staff, his campaign pulled that after 34 minutes, because at a certain point, like we started the conversation, that baby was having a hard time getting across that highway.
Extraordinarily, he wasn't exposed. He exposed himself by choice, by design. Hans, what do you make of it?
I'd really love to know what the internal conversation is at the Trump campaign tonight on whether or not they think that went well. And to Michael's point on to sort of which audience he was broadcasting, it's possible they think it went well. I don't have the reporting to sort of, and that's, I think, what we need to figure out. And the better Trump reporters, I'm mostly on the Harris-Biden campaign. It's really an interesting question on what sort of his inner core thinks, and then sort of the broader group that he talks to, whether or not they think that's a success. And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, the broader question we've always had about Trump, and it seems to percolate up every fortnight, is whether or not he's going to run a disciplined campaign. And there's going to be a slew of stories. There usually is on, this is a new Trump. He's disciplined. He's a different candidate. He's chastened. He's learned a lot. He's had this near-death experience. And then every time he's given an opportunity, it does seem like the old Trump comes out. This seems sort of vintage Trump bottled from, say, the 2016 campaign, 2017. This didn't seem the Trump of the first 25 minutes of his RNC speech, where he did try to turn a new leaf. But again, for the first third of that speech, not for the entirety of it. And so I think we kind of have our answer on whether or not Donald Trump's going to be Donald Trump.
But, John, he need not feed his base red meat. They're already fat and happy, and I mean that figuratively. He's got them locked up. They worship him. And these comments that he's making today are right along the same lines we've been hearing for a week. She's a diversity hire. She's a DEI candidate. We've heard it. We know who loves it. But what about the rest of the world? Is there a risk that continuing on this beat is going to turn off centrist voters? A lot of people who voted for Nikki Haley, who, let's remind everyone, was another woman of color.
Yeah, this is how he screwed himself out of the presidency in 2020, more or less, right? I mean, obviously, the pandemic had a huge effect on that, variety of other factors. But what Donald Trump did for 4 years in the White House was divide people. What he did on the campaign trail in 2020 was to continue to divide people. And in his mind, he was like, if I can just jack up my base big enough, I will beat the other side. And what we saw was a huge increase in the number of Republican voters in 2020 that was a fraction of the increase in Democratic voters in 2020. So what he was able to do with all that divisiveness was create more people who disliked him than people who liked him. I think there's a combination of things going on here. I think he walked in there and wanted to be combative. I think that is helpful for him with his base. And at the same time, no political operative would have advised him to do that. I think to Hans's point, what he's revealing here is essentially the core Donald Trump. This was his instinct. This is who he is. As far as what the Trump campaign's thinking, and it doesn't really matter because they respond to what he does. They react to what he does. They try to manage him ahead of time. They try to manage him a little bit afterward, but nobody is telling him no.
Michael, let's go deeper into strategy because Republicans are labeling Vice President Harris as the borders are, saying she had one job to fix the border and she didn't do it. Well, she is now trying to flip the script on them. And last night she talked about Donald Trump. We aired a clip before. Donald Trump tanking the bipartisan border deal. Is that the right way for her to handle this line of attack?
Oh, I think so, at least in the first instances of it. Absolutely. Because we don't have a deal, not because of anything the borders are, as she's been termed by the hard right in MAGA did, or that the Biden administration didn't do. It didn't happen because Republicans killed it. And they killed it because Donald Trump told them to. And she made that very clear. And so while, you have this narrative that's out there, and it's a very potent one for Republicans, they killed their own story. They killed their own opportunity to really use a political sledgehammer against then Biden and now Kamala Harris by, putting in the work to create a very conservative border bill with one of the most conservative senators in the Senate, Senator Langford, leading it. And to go out and get Republicans in the House and the Senate lined up behind it, only to have Donald Trump recognize, oh, hell, I want to have something to run on. If they take this off the table, I can't use immigration as a cudgel against Democrats. So kill it. So, yeah, that's an effective narrative. And why it works is because we watched it happen. So you can't sit back and tell us we didn't see and hear the process because we were involved as citizens in the process. And we were involved because we were hopeful. And we were hopeful because it was the first time we could get something in this intractable problem for the last 25, 30 years. And so I think it's a really good strategy to lean into that as much as she can, and they will do some more of it. But there does come a point where you're then going to have to offer, okay, what will you do to fix it? She said that she'll want that bill re-resurrected, and she will sign it. But I think probably a little bit more juice on that would make it a more stimulating conversation for voters. It's not enough to say, okay, just send me the bill and I'll sign it, the same bill. But they also want to know, well, what are you going to do to address what we perceive to be a bigger problem than maybe that bill alone represents. And so that'll be the next part to see whether or not she can address that.
John, I realize getting a big union endorsement is different than it used to be. Just because you got the leadership doesn't mean you have the rank and file. However, Vice President Harris did get the UAW endorsement today. What's your take on this? How big of a deal is it?
I mean, it's a big deal in this way, Stephanie, and you make a good point. Obviously, not everybody in the United Auto Workers is going to vote for Kamala Harris, but what happens when they endorse is that you mobilize their leadership, you mobilize their grassroots leaders within states, and so what you get is, bodies on the ground that are working for your campaign, which is, hugely important. And when I say working for the campaign, I don't mean directly working for the campaign, but they are going to be people who help with turnout and other activities on the ground. You get, potentially a lot of money spent on your behalf from that union or from its allies. So this is a big deal for her, particularly a big deal in Michigan, a state that had been slipping away from Democrats. We'll have to see if she's able to put it back in play, if it changes much of what that dynamic was. But this is a big deal for her.